Okay. Aloha, mahalo for joining Kokua Council's State House District 26 Candidates Forum. I'm LILA MOWER, President of the Kokua Council. The Kokua Council is one of Hawaii's oldest advocacy organizations, engaging those who are interested in shaping the future and the well-being of our community. Despite current limitations on large group gatherings, the Kokua Council continues to be active and recently facilitated conferences to address the government's response to the current pandemic. Because this is an election year, we also offer the public these opportunities to meet and study their candidates. In a few weeks and after the primary election, we hope to hold another mayoral forum, possibly a debate. This afternoon, we will meet Kim Koko Iwamoto. Scott Psyche sent his regrets and shared surveys, which he said were recently completed by both candidates. He added, to quote him, "I believe that the responses may answer some of the questions to be posed by Kokua Council. The candidates' responses are very informative and interesting," end of quote. If the audience is interested in receiving a link to those surveys, please email kokuacouncil.programs@gmail.com and the link will be emailed to you. Although we only have one candidate participating, we'll keep to our regular format. Thus, there will be audible warnings at 15 seconds before the allotted time expires. So let's begin. Kim Koko, in 3 minutes, please tell us who you are and why you think you should represent House District 26.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Lila, and the board of Kokua Council. I really appreciate this opportunity. And you know, like many of the viewers, I actually base a lot of my decisions on who I'm going to vote for based on these kind of forums or debates to see a side-by-side comparison of how people answer the questions, how sincerely they feel about an issue. And so thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'm sorry that my opponent couldn't join us. But thank you. So let me start. I'm going to throw an icebreaker out there. So most people are like, how did you get the name Kim Koko? And I have to just say that I was born on Kauai. And my mother went into labor at a party at the Coco Palms Hotel. So Mrs. Guslander, the owner, visited us in the hospital the next morning and asked my mother to name me Coco after the hotel, and that's how I got the name Kim Koko. I was, you know, I was born into a small business family in transportation, and like most small business entrepreneur families, everyone works. My mother, growing up in her family of farmers, she did the bookkeeping. My father, in his family business, he washed cars in high school. So they expected that same kind of work ethic from me as well. I had a paper route when I was in 5th grade. I delivered Star Bulletin on my bicycle on a hilly residential area. And then by the time I was in high school, I was doing the Roberts Overnighters, like booking those. I also washed cars at the rental car stations, and I poured beverages on the Li'ikai catamaran. So I've been working, I've always been connected to people who are, you know, I've always worked alongside people who are, you know, depend on salaries to make ends meet, to pay their bills. When I eventually went away to college, I went to New York City, and my dream was to be in the fashion industry. And I got my degree. I'm working in my dream job, really. And then my employer approaches me and says, you know, one of her customers, our largest corporate client, had a problem with me because they realized that I was transgender. And this is in the early 90s in New York City. And even in New York City, even in the fashion industry, there were no protections on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. So it was a wake-up call for me, because growing up here in Hawaii, I worked alongside other trans people, and they were in supervisory positions. So I didn't even think that that would be an issue in New York City in the fashion industry. But lo and behold, I was subjected to, you know, bigotry by my employer. And it's the first, and it actually made me realize, wait a minute, with this kind of social injustice, it had a huge economic impact on me. And I looked around at my peer group, and I'm like, wow, this is why our choices are limited, and this is why certain decisions are being made by people who don't have opportunity. And so I decided to go to law school and to figure out how to change the laws. So I totally did a huge pivot from fashion into law, and I just became fired up about this kind of injustice and what I could do to make it better, make the world better, make the workplace better. So I graduated, and in the meantime, my mom had a stroke, so I came back to Hawaii to be closer to her and take care of her. I ended up passing the bar and working first as a homeless outreach coordinator and then as managing attorney of Volunteer Legal Services Hawaii. And I also worked with the community to finally change the laws here in Hawaii around civil rights issues, around employment practices, so that more people would be included by our civil rights laws. And it took many years and many different kind of, obviously there's employment, there's public accommodations, housing. So all of these areas of civil rights I worked on with other community members, with unions and our allies. So that's what led me to be more of a community organizer and an activist. I also became a foster parent. When I was in New York City, I was working as a volunteer with the teen group, and I would see a lot of homeless young people who were LGBT, and they were kicked out of their homes for being gay, lesbian, or trans, or bi. And I realized that they were also homeless because of that reason. So I got licensed as a therapeutic foster parent. And I told my social worker, I said, you know, I have a really strong feeling that there are LGBT teenagers in the foster care system who are not being validated or affirmed when they come home from school. And in fact, that was true. And so I had 5 at different points, one at a time, 5 different teenagers living in my home and also in my heart. 15 seconds. Okay, so that's what led me, advocating for their education led me to run for the Board of Education, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Very interesting history. Thank you, Kim Coco. Now, some of Kokua Council's board directors will pose questions, and you will have 2 minutes to answer each of them. Oh, okay, Lourdes, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you and welcome to Kokua Council. In fact, I am from Kauai and I had muddy feet at Cocoa Palms and probably ran in the same place where you were. I'm a volunteer director at Kokua Council, and I've served as a condominium director on my board. So my question for you is, the Kaka'ako district may have the most multi-family buildings in the state, including condominiums. While the state has oversight of condos, the city and county's Department of Planning and Permitting plays an important part because most condo owners' complaints are centered around neglect or deferred maintenance of these buildings. Recently, because of the Marco Polo fire, the city became more involved with the maintenance of these multi-family structures. What are your thoughts on the development of an ombudsman office to assist condo owners with the Department of Planning and Permitting services? Thank you.
Well, I thank you so much, Lourdes, for your service on the Kokua Council and for this question. So, you know, as a community organizer, I first go to the community who actually wants to be heard, who needs to be represented, who wants justice and fairness. And as you mentioned, you've been trying to an ombudsman, hopefully, helps people to be heard. And that's the main point, is that whatever the vehicle, and if it's, first of all, it's the job of the government in these senses. If they're the ones doing the permitting, if they're the ones responsible for oversight, then they should be providing. If people aren't feeling heard and they can get access, then definitely it's upon the government offices to provide an ombudsman to help them process the claims, etc. But as you know, the state doesn't need to stand by during all of this. In fact, there are 15 seconds. There are so many ways that so many bills that come to the legislature, and so many of them, unless they're helping the stakeholders of lobbyists, they often don't pass, and we have to change that.
Thank you, Kim Coco. All right, Rick, you're next.
All right. Welcome, Kim Coco. Thank you for joining us. So I've been in the mental health field for like 45 years, and it's kind of a passion of mine to serve folks with mental health issues. And as you know, in Hawaii, there's issues around all of that. With Kokua Council, I'm the first vice president, and I'm in many different boards and different things around Hawaii. Hawaii Meals on Wheels, I'm secretary, and on and on and on. My question for you, though, is, so I know you'd be new to legislators, so what recent Hawaii mental health bills are you familiar with? That's the first part. And if elected, what would your office hope to promote for the future? And then the last part is, what will be needed to advance our recovery model and make mental health programs more accessible to individuals who need the services? It's kind of a three-part question.
Wow, in 2 minutes. Okay.
Take your time. Take your time.
Sorry. So thank you, Rick, for your service. And this is a topic that, so I've been on the board of the ACLU, and so the most recent bill that comes to mind was the bill that was passed that allows basically state actors to administer, I guess, medications, mental psychotropic drugs possibly, to people who are homeless and who cannot consent. So basically administering, trying to help medicate them to wellness without their consent. And so I have to say that as a member of the ACLU board at the time, I strongly supported our position, which was that was a little bit of overreach. And I'm concerned because, and you probably, obviously, when you introduce medications, any kind of mental health medications, the dosage that's, suggested to start off doesn't hit everyone the same way. That's number one, right? We know a lot of times when people get over medicated or under medicated, and how do you track somebody who's just basically a drive-by kind of, you get this drive-by administration. Secondly is you need to monitor. Anytime somebody's on any kind of psychotropic drug, you need to monitor them regularly. Some of the side effects might be suicidal. Third, they might interact with whatever kind of self-medicating they're doing through, substance abuse or substance use that might actually have counterindications. So that's really scary too. Unless you're doing a blood screen on somebody and you're like, okay, you're not interjecting this kind of substance and there's no contraindications with this one. Then, so that raises a lot of concerns for me too. And finally, is it the least invasive way that we can help this person? And obviously we need to offer housing first, right? We need to make sure we can find these people. Right now, there are so many Airbnbs vacant, so many hotel rooms vacant. We have federal relief aid. We want to help those small business owners and those larger corporations get some money. We need to buy bulk rate rooms for housing our families who are living on the streets right now. And for those who do have mental health issues, we can better serve them once we know how to find them, once we know how to help monitor them.
Thank you, Kim Coco. Okay, here's Barbara Service with her question.
I need to be put back in.
You're not in?
Not my, oh, I guess my voice is, that's enough.
What about your start video button?
Okay, got it. Okay, ready?
Yes.
Aloha, Kim Coco. I know you primarily from Cathedral of St. Andrew. You've come a few times and talked to us about social justice issues. We really appreciate it. I'm active with AARP, Kokua Council, of course, Hawaii Alliance for Retired Americans, and the Policy Advisory Board for Elder Affairs. My question is about caregiving. I'm sure you're aware there are approximately 154,000 caregivers in Hawaii, providing about 144 million hours of care. The average caregiver is between 30 and 64, is usually a woman, and 4 out of 10 adults are actually providing care for sick or elderly relatives. Most of them work outside the home. Most of our old folks want to age in place. They want to stay home as long as possible. I wonder what you can do to help our caregivers and our kupuna. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for raising this important issue. So as I mentioned, I actually deferred going to law school because my mom had a severe stroke and I was her primary caregiver, and I was only 26. But, you know, I was able to stay with her and provide that care. And eventually I got her to a place where she could go to a daycare center, and then I went to work. But not everyone has that ability. So in order to keep people in their homes, so first of all, Massachusetts is a perfect model where they actually provide family members you know, a large enough stipend where somebody can actually provide care. As you mentioned, that's time away from job and earning incomes, for the family. So there should be ways of subsidizing. Also, I believe in housing for all and meet people where their housing needs are. We need to expand Section 8 so that more people can have access to that, so that they can stay in their home. So keeping people in their homes, number one, providing them with caregivers. Ideally, I mean, if they have family who are willing to, and maybe they can't afford to take all that time, but they have the love and the patience and the willingness to be there, then we should find ways to support that. Because in the end of the day, if somebody actually put their parent, for instance, at the care of the state, it would cost much more money, right? So it's a cost savings. So we can work on all of that. I feel there are very clear solutions and there are clear models.
All right. Thank you, Kim Coco. Did you want to add 15 more seconds to that?
I'll hold my time over to something else.
All right. Sorry about that. Helen Wagner. Helen, are you ready?
Yeah, but it says that you have the video screen. It says the host can. Okay.
How's it going?
My name's Helen Wagner, and I welcome you today to Kokua Council. I serve on the board of directors and a life member. Also, I serve on the board for Hawaii Family Caregivers, Hawaii Retired, our Allegiance of Retired Americans, and AARP. Well, I'm a community activist. One of the questions I have, with the recent increase in the numbers of COVID-19 cases, what is your position on the initiative Let Hawaii Work, on opening and shutting businesses and jobs that are affected by the virus? Where do you stand on that?
Well, Helen, thank you for your many years of service. We don't live in a vacuum. We are actually all connected. And whether we, and so this virus actually transcends, race, it transcends sexual orientation, it transcends economic class, everything. So it transmits in so many different ways. So I think we need to be really mindful of how our actions can impact others. And I believe in putting community safety before, before other kind of priorities. I think safety is number one, especially because it looks like it's kind of targeting or having a greater impact on our elder population and our immune compromised population, communities that I've been an advocate for. So I think we need to put safety first. And this also falls into reopening our schools. So it's not just businesses, but it's also government services, right? Do we just kind of throw people into work when they don't have the proper protocols or safety equipment or training? And what risk are we subjecting them to, and what kind of, do they get sick days if they get sick? A lot of our substitute teachers, for instance, don't get sick days. So if they get sick at work, they're kind of out, you know, so anyway, it's very complicated given our lack of paid sick days, our lack of family leave, our lack of childcare services. Like, it's so layered and complicated, but definitely safety first is my position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim Coco. All right, Dale Head, are you ready with your question? Dale, you have to unmute yourself. Oh, let's see. Dale, can you unmute yourself?
Dale, if you move your cursor down to the lower left hand of your frame, there's a unmute button. You can click on the little microphone.
Do you see it, Dale? He did cataract surgery yesterday.
As a host, Lila, I think you can also, there he is. Hey, Dale.
Okay, you got it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm on an iPad. It's giving me problems here. I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, Kim. Anyway, I was 36 years in the federal government. I'm an Army veteran. I spent 12 of the last 14 years in a condominium board out in Waianae. And I have audited elections and found that the management companies are in a conflict of interest in running the elections. Some of them they really intervene in. They're bogus elections. They control the board. Okay. Now, item. The state condo statutes do not provide for mail-in balloting for homeowner association elections. Instead, although a large portion of property owners do not reside on site, they are provided with a proxy form, which guides them to assign their vote to someone else to cast on their behalf. Too often this is done by the company to their benefit. Will you introduce legislation to guarantee the right of the condo owner to vote by mail and via the internet? Thank you.
Well, that's it. Yes. I mean, here's the deal. I'm always for the underdog. I mean, truly, when consumer, whether it's a consumer or a individual owner up against a whole like mob or group or corporation or a kind of a business, quasi-business entity that is used to getting its way by sheer force and manipulation of the procedural rules and laws, I just don't think that's the healthiest way of doing things. We need to think beyond that. We need to honor that, you know, the people's voices need to find a way to be heard. And like you mentioned, there's a number of reasons why somebody might not be able to attend in person. And if it's good enough for our government right now with all the mail-ins, and I mean, maybe you shouldn't waste the crisis. We should say, yes, all of the things should be mailed in because, you know, we can actually spread infection if we all go to that one board meeting or to that management association meeting.
Thank you, Kim Coco.
Thank you.
Gary Simon, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you. Thank you, Lila, and thank you, Kim Coco. I'm Gary Simon. I'm the president of AARP Hawaii, and I'm the president of the Hawaii Family Caregiver Coalition. COVID-19 has suppressed citizen involvement in the legislative process, especially active participation in hearings. What will you implement to re-engage, enhance, and encourage citizen involvement with legislators and legislative processes, including hearings? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for your service on this council and ARP as well, AARP. You know, it's interesting. I'm grateful that we have this this situation has arisen that now forces us to use technologies such as Zoom, but there's other technologies that we can use to bring voices to the forefront that may not have been able to get to the legislature. And I'm thinking of the people who are impacted by, you know, Alexander and Baldwin bills to take water from local farmers and on our neighbor islands, how they were kind of like left out of a lot of the process because on one hand, huge corporations hire lobbyists to park their bodies at the Capitol, and then farming families and farmers and people who are on neighbor islands, it's such an ordeal to actually get to the meetings. So finally, we are now forced to use some of this technology, which I'm really happy about. I know that Maui County Council has been using these technologies for a while now. I mean, again, you know, because they represent Molokai and parts of like Hana, obviously, where it's more difficult to get into Wailuku. And so all of these obstacles, definitely we want to make government processes accessible. But here's the other part that, to me, how accessible, what is a public process? I mean, we all saw my opponent standing there at a press conference before this legislative session started, basically announcing that he struck a deal. They struck a deal with the business, with the corporations to continue paying poverty wages. Do you guys remember that? He basically, so I'm like, wait, where's the process? Where's the public hearings? He announced what they were gonna do, how they're gonna do it. It was fascinating to me, and it never got passed. But that was his response to having a more open session the year before, where a lot of the stakeholders all agreed that $15 an hour for a minimum wage was where it was at. We even got the governor to say that's the bill he would sign. And then suddenly, that bill was killed, and then as it was coming into this current legislative session, he announced, you know, like it really stifles the public hearing process and the democratic process to be told before the whole legislative session that they already struck a deal and now we just have to live with it. So that's a problem as well. So, you know, accessing democracy, making sure it's accessible to everyone is really important. And I'll do everything to support protecting a more open process, including voting to have the legislature not exempt from the Sunshine Law.
Thank you very much, Kim Coco. All right, Doug Matsuoka, are you ready?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks, Kim Coco, for participating in this. I am on the board of Kokua Council. I kind of aged in, I think. And I'm working also with Hawaii Meals on Wheels, the other Meals on Wheels. And you probably know, founding member of the Hawaii Guerrilla Video Hui. My question, and this is the Doug question, and in part it's from my own experience with homelessness in 2014. And my question is this: given that 7,000 people became homeless on Oahu last year, and on top of that, this year's pandemic has thrown so many people out of work, what can you do as a legislator to prevent people from becoming homeless?
Right. Well, you know, as you know, the judiciary, the governor have proclamations that extend up until the end of August. And then what happens, right? I was actually just on a training call for pro bono attorneys. The call was led by Legal Aid and I think Volunteer Legal Services Hawaii to train attorneys on how to help tenants through these proceedings for eviction, which obviously we want to keep them from getting to that stage. One of my mailers that I mailed to our community at the onset of this pandemic, when people were losing their jobs, I laid out arguments to landlords basically to say why they shouldn't try to evict people when they can't pay. Not just because of the moratorium on evictions, but because of the reality of the matter is that so as I walked around like 4 months later and met with landlords, they have so many vacant units because people are just consolidating their households now. So it's not like evicting people is going to bring you in any money. And I mentioned earlier on, we need to expand our Section 8 so that everyone gets housing based on what their financial abilities are. And it's all temporary, because Section 8, if one day you're making nothing and the next week, month you're making $5,000, well, then it's going to change immediately. So Section 8 is very responsive. So that model can be used, and it's already there as a template to keep people from slipping into homelessness. And in fact, I recommend to a lot of landlords, I'm a landlord, and I recommend to a lot of landlords that this is a great opportunity, because there's been a lot of discrimination against Section 8 tenants, but this is a great opportunity because their rents are basically guaranteed. Like if a tenant isn't able, if they can pay their portion, and maybe their portion is $500 a month or whatever, but then something happens to them, like they lose their job, then Section 8 will kick in and make sure that their difference is covered. So we need more of that. We need more of that to make sure that we aren't at 7,000 people slipping into homelessness is not acceptable. Absolutely, we've been failing. We've been failing on that.
Thank you, Kim Coco. Kathy Wyatt, your question, please.
Hey, I'm here. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you. What is the most pressing issue in your district, and what do you plan to do about it?
Right, and I think the point that Doug raised, so thank you, Kathleen. I think the point that Doug raised about homelessness, I mean, people are freaked out, right? I mean, they're not sure what to do. What are they going to do when it lifts? So homelessness, people are concerned. Both they're concerned for people who are houseless, which is, and I thank people when they express that empathy and compassion. And then there are people who are concerned because when you look outside of who's walking around, who has no shelter to hide in, basically, it's so they, the people who are unsheltered are outnumbering those who can actually shelter during a hurricane or during a pandemic. So there's this kind of perceptual thing that it's also even worse because of the disproportionate numbers of people who are housed along, who are using the streets with those who are not housed. But I mentioned this earlier, Airbnbs, hotel vacancies, we need to get people housed. So that's the main concern I think that people are feeling, they're seeing, they're expressing is houselessness. And the solution is to just commit to a year, use some of our federal relief funds to get people housed.
All right. Thank you, Kim Coco. Lourdes, your next question, please.
Hi. My question is, condo owners are mandated to contribute to the Condo Educational Trust Fund and no one else contributes. How do you feel about directing funds from the Condo Educational Trust Fund to the Regulated Industry Complaints Office, RICO, both under DCCA, to support assisting condo owners with their issues?
Interesting. So I apologize for not knowing that detail. Wait, before you disappear, Lourdes, can I ask you, so is that currently what's happening now? So condo owners are forced to put in a fee, and then that fee goes to DCCA, and then that fee is used for what purpose?
For education, for board members, for owners, and DCCA does a great job of educating, is trying to get the directors really to be educated, which a lot of them don't even want to be there. But my concern is that there are millions of dollars sitting in this educational fund, and it might be directed to the general fund if we don't use it.
Yeah, that's not okay. That's not okay. That's not okay. I mean, especially because if it's a fine just for one population and they claim for that it's going to be used for a service to benefit that one consumer group, you can't suck it up into the general fund.
And the part is, myself and a lot of condo owners don't resist paying into this fund. I mean, you can charge me for it, and please use it for the owners who are contributing to this. So the educational fund has been used for mediation.
I was gonna say,
Use it for recall.
right, no, it makes sense to use it for mediation because a lot of this, sometimes it's, yes, there are some mean-spirited people and some of, you know, in some of these kind of interactions, but sometimes people just aren't aware and quote, they need to be educated. But this happens in every sector, including employment, you know, everything where people aren't knowing enough of exactly what should be happening, and they step on toes and they hurt people. But in this case, you can cause somebody to lose their home, right? If you,
Exactly.
and that's really scary. So we definitely need to use these resources to benefit the people who are putting in.
Well, you know, the latest is the non-judicial foreclosures,
Oh
and the decision on the came down from you know, the higher court that it's not constitutional.
Right.
So,
But isn't it interesting how that passed the legislature and who was speaker? You say, but no, you know, I'm seriously, there's a lot, I'm telling you. And if you read my response to the Democratic Party questionnaire that Scott Psyche referenced, I basically lay out there for everyone to see the Speaker of the House has unlimited bills that he can introduce. So he gets to stand there proudly and say, I introduced this bill and this bill and this bill and this bill. And he gets to take all the credit for that, right? But then he can also quietly kill all the bills or make certain bills pass based on who's lobbying him in the back rooms, because there's no sunshine law. I mean, so there's all of this kind of, we need more transparency and we need to build up trust in how our legislature operates and who it's representing. Okay. Well, you're the keeper of the time, so if I engage you.
a long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lourdes. Thank you, Kim Coco. Rick Tabor, your next question,
Okay.
please.
You're doing great, Kim Coco. Really appreciate you being here. So I started out in Hawaii as a Navy hospital corpsman stationed at K-Bay. So medical is kind of a huge thing for me. And something coming up here you're probably well aware of. We have a number of docs and nurses that are about to retire, about half of them. At the same time that our kapuna are about to rise, baby boom wise, and a huge surge. We've learned that of graduating medical students and nurses, a lot of them are on the mainland, only about 10% return to Hawaii. So we've got this like perfect storm about to hit. It's actually hitting already.
It's already,
Yeah, it's happening. So, I mean, these are hard questions, I know, but what can we do? What would you do as a legislator? What would you recommend?
Right, so I do sit on the JAPSOM Undine Hedges Advisory Council Committee. And so we get updated on all of these impacts. Number one, you know, one of the things that's scaring away primary care physicians is HMSA's capitation rates. They have this weird kind of compensation structure that really, really hurts, especially rural primary care physicians. It's just HMSA is such a huge elephant in the room. And when they do these policies, these new kind of compensation of physicians, these new schemes, and it hurts them. And then our primary care physicians leave or just retire. They're just fed up with it. It hurts us as consumers. So, you know, anyone who provides insurance in the state of Hawaii, they are under a regulated industry and they are under the insurance commissioner. I believe we need to actually rise up as a community and challenge the insurance commissioner to take action when a third party or when an insurance provider actually starts implementing policies that are hurting us as consumers and residents and limiting our choices for physicians. But yes, absolutely, we have a shortage and we've known about this shortage for a really long time. We need to, you know, we need to provide more loan forgiveness for people, especially for our young people who are doctors coming out of medical school so that they stay locally. And we can do that. I think there was a pilot program, but we need to expand that kind of funding.
All right, thank you, Kim Coco. Barbara Service, your next question, please.
Okay. Hi, Kim Coco. Our Care, Our Choice, the Death with Dignity law became law on January 1st, 2019. Most of us, especially people who have terminal illness, want control over what happens to us. Where do you stand on this issue?
Oh, actually, yeah, thank you. I submitted testimony in support of giving patients the right to choose and to consult with their physician. And I know that logistically, I think there needs to be some kind of revisiting of some of this too, because in fact, the reality of it is much more difficult. I think there are some things coming up, like if you're living in a care home and you don't have access because of the care home's religious positions or something. I think we need to work on it so that, more people can have access to it, to this as an option. Yeah, but I do know of people who've actually used this. So I'm really grateful for the work that all the advocates and community members and stakeholders have done on this issue. I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim Coco. Helen, your next question, please.
Okay. This is thank you for being here today. You're really, wait. Okay. We welcome you. And with COVID-19, it's created a lot of issues for not only our nation, but our island as well. What do you think that we have been doing well here on the islands, and what needs to be done next? Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, what's so sweet actually are people, individuals, like what happened when we first had the pandemic. People were making masks, people were building face shields, people were delivering food for each other. I mean, all of that kind of stuff. We do that so well as individual community members. I was really disappointed by how permeable our boundaries are. We should literally be more like New Zealand. We shouldn't compare our situation to the rest of the continental United States. We should really be looking at New Zealand as a model, as a comparative model, because we're both surrounded by water, and we both need to get on airplanes to permeate our borders, right? So New Zealand, within so many days, they locked down their borders. No planes, no visitors can come in and out, and they got rid of it completely within like 30 days. I think they were done with all of their COVID, and now they're totally free of it. We didn't do that. In the middle of the pandemic, or the beginning of the pandemic, even though, we had the CEO of the airline sitting at Speaker Psyche's economic recovery panel, no one bothered to lean over the table and say, excuse me, airline CEO, do you mind not selling cheap tickets from the hotspot pandemic areas, and importing all of this virus into Hawaii? Why would you be doing that? If anything, jack up the prices to make it harder for people to come. But do you remember when people were trying to quarantine in Hawaii? Oh, I'm sick, I'm gonna go quarantine with my family in Hawaii. That is wrong. That was the mistake. We need to change that. Also, people coming in, the whole quarantine guidelines, what's the point of them? There's so many exemptions to the quarantine guidelines. All the military coming in, certain kinds of business owners can go straight from the airport, from attending a funeral where they got lots of hugs in a hotspot area, and they go straight to work because the people at the airport said, oh no, you're in this kind of line of work, you can go straight to work. And then my friend who actually went through that experience said, well, what about my coworkers? I mean, just because I'm in this kind of work doesn't keep anybody safe. It's that kind of what all these weird nonsensical exemptions to the rule make us more vulnerable.
Thank you, Kim Coco.
Fuck over. Pardon me.
Dale, you're up. Yes. Dale Head, you're up. Now, did we lose Dale? Where is he? There he is. Dale, you have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Oh, there we are. Okay. I'm in Moana Valley. I got some connectivity problems back here. So anyway, as of the urbanization of our population shows that about half the Hawaii population lives in these homeowner associations now, in your District 26, probably higher than that, and it's climbing. Question, would you support establishment of a standalone condo-specific consumer protection committee? This is split that responsibility off from the current Commerce Consumer Protection Committee. It's not working out too good for us. Thank you. Got
Kim,
that?
yeah. Kim, were you able to understand his question? It was kind of choppy, huh?
Yeah, it was a little choppy, I'm sorry. But from my understanding, there is currently, and again, I'm sorry, I'm not more aware of this, but currently there's a embedded process. Dale, do you mind repeating the question, or maybe?
You know what?
Sure.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Dale.
Okay. Well, Bad, Lila, could you give that question for me?
Sure. Would you support establishment of a standalone condo-specific consumer protection committee? This would split that committee off from the current unworkable Commerce and Consumer Affairs committees.
Yes, yes. Again, anything to help individual consumers basically have a fair shot at accessing, you know, fairness and justice for them. You know, that's my whole focus, is making sure that, you know, individuals who could be homeless because of, you know, a wayward relationship or a dysfunctional relationship with their board or their association. Yes, so absolutely. I definitely support that, whether it's, you know, and an ombudsman, whatever is needed to make sure people are heard and not and treated fairly. That's the most important thing.
All right, great. Thank you, Kim Coco. Gary, your next question, please. Gary Simon.
Thank you, Lila. The prison system is one of our nation's largest private industries. Our island sends many of our adjudicated Hawaii offenders to the mainland to serve their time. This isolates them from their family and loved ones, making it difficult for them to reintegrate into our communities. What are your thoughts on this arrangement, and what are some reasonable short and long-term solutions? Thank you, Kim Coco.
Thank you, Gary. So definitely I support bringing our incarcerated family members home where they can be, there are more supports so that when they do integrate back into our communities and our homes, that transition is much more natural and seamless. Because they will, and we need them to come back. And it's, you know, so we need to stop investing in privatized prisons, first of all. That is, you know, that's shameful that we would be helping people, instead of people make money off the incarceration of, and also the perpetuation of racism, because we know how certain groups are overrepresented, and not like it's by chance overrepresented, but the whole, you know, prosecution, the punishment, every aspect is embedded with racism, including the school to prison pipeline. We have to be aware of that. So obviously I support investing in reform, in actually providing services. I don't know how many people saw the movie Out of State, but it was written, done by some local filmmakers, about how people come out of prison and how there's like a lack of supports for them. It's really designed to set people up for failure. This idea of paying back restitution, but you don't have a job and no one's helping you figure out how to housing. And I'm so grateful for the advocates who actually got IDs to be given to people before they exit. So at least they can get a job and hit the ground running. But even now we have to, with the pandemic going on, we need to make sure that their community supports and they're getting all of the kind of safety nets that they can be, you know, part of their communities as well, and not have to go back to living on the street or, you know, whatever happened. But also we cannot treat our prisons as if they are mental health facilities. Like that's what we're doing to a lot of, we're redirecting people who should be getting mental health treatment, trauma treatment, substance abuse counseling. Those services are just not readily available for a lot of our community members. And the wait time is so long. So by the time you have the urge of, I want to get clean and sober, and then by the time you actually get into a program, that urge is kind of gone, you know? And so you lose that momentum, and which is really important. So we need to definitely invest in more services, more programs that help people transition out of prison, but also keep them from even entering the criminal justice system.
Thank you, Kim Coco. All right, Doug Matsilka, your next question, please.
Okay, this is Doug again, and this is kind of a process question. And it's this. Under what conditions do you believe gut and replace bills can or should be used?
Well, actually, personally, I don't. I think, you know, the Supreme Court is dealing with this right now, actually. I know the lower court said it was okay, and because it was very broadly interpreted. But yeah, I think it's an abomination of the democratic process, because how is it that you have all these people showing up to hearings to give input on key language, on statutory language and the impacts, and then suddenly in conference committee, and again, where there's no sunshine law, so deals are being made in back rooms, and then they come into the conference room, which in theory is public, and then they just kind of say what's going to happen. And, you know, and this is one of the reasons why I'm running for office right now against a particular opponent, is because it has gone out of control. I mean, what kind of things are being gutted and replaced, and the reasoning and the rationale behind that, and the arrogance. I think that people don't want that. I think it's offensive, and it builds distrust. And it also leads, frankly, so while my opponent has been speaker, there's been 2 polls that came out about how, and it shows how low the approval rating is of the legislature. I think one poll said it was 21% approval rating, and they said that more people in Hawaii have approved Trump more than our legislature. Number one, that's shockingly low. And then number 2 is that our legislature also has a lower approval rating than EGAY. So that was, one was done in 2018 and one poll was done in 2019. I mean, what more feedback do we need to say this is not acceptable, and it actually creates distrust among voters who want fair government?
Thank you, Kim Coco. All right, Kathy Wyatt, your question, please.
Hi, it's me again. I slighted myself by not introducing me to you, and I apologize for that the first time, so I'm going to do it now. I'm Kathy Wyatt, and I am on the board of directors for Kokua Council, the Hawaiian Pacific Gerontological Society, the Hawaiian Family Caregiver Coalition, and I have an adult daycare center and a nonprofit organization. So my focus is mostly on seniors, but everybody's important, so I'll go forward with that. Telehealth has been a savior of many in the medical and mental health field. I mean, it's been being developed since the late 90s when I was an active nurse. Yet the outer islands and parts of Oahu don't have access to this now essential service. If elected, what will you do to help resolve this?
Well, obviously, if people have the technology in their own homes, then that's great. Then we definitely should have this as an additional option, right? As a screening tool, possibly, because it might be more immediate, especially with coronavirus. It might mean less exposure to other kinds of illnesses. But truthfully, there was a lot of, when I was door knocking in our district, I met a lot of elderly who had no internet access and no smartphone, you know, and so it's going to cut them off. So I'm for it as an option, but also I'm very aware that not everyone has the technology to make that happen. So I would support it as an option, as a screening option, but I think that we need to do, how are we going to address the needs of those who don't have that access?
Do you think the social, this is ad-libbing, and I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but do you think it would be possible to have social workers with a tablet or something to go visit the people that need the telehealth with their doctor?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we have to get really creative about problem solving right now. Not just now, but why aren't we responsive in general? Like, you know, it's not solutions we make, it feels like we make solutions much more difficult than they need to be. So yes, it would be great. And I can imagine there being social workers out there who would willingly and readily lean in and offer their iPad to one of their clients so that they can actually meet their physician online.
All right, thank you, Kim Coco. Now you can take a deep breath because that was the end of our Q&A session. Okay, so I hope you're ready. We're going to get going into the lightning round. Regardless of the legality and complexity of some of the following doctrines, policies, or issues, we ask you to provide immediate yes or no, agree or disagree type responses, with only a couple of seconds to respond. For example, regardless of the current law, regarding the topic, legalize marijuana, you might answer yes if you agree in general with that policy, or answer no if you do not believe in legalizing marijuana. At the end of the lightning round session, you will have, well, we were going to give you 90 seconds, but we'll give you 2 minutes to expound upon any of your lightning round answers. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, the first one, qualified immunity.
Qualified immunity. Oh my God, can I call a friend? Qualified immunity. I'm not sure what that context is. I just blanked out. Qualified immunity. It feels like you're letting somebody off of liability, so I'm gonna say no. I don't know enough. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Next one, civil asset forfeiture.
Oh, I worked on that issue and I testified on the issue. I am against civil asset forfeiture, and I was so mad that we didn't go through. I shouldn't say anything more. That's my 2 minutes, sorry.
All right, next one, cash bail.
I'm against cash bail.
All right, homeless, houseless sweeps.
Against it.
All right, the next one, sit-lie ban.
Against it.
Next one, reopening public schools.
Safely.
All right, next one, suspension of open meetings and public record laws under emergency orders.
Against it.
Okay. Criminalization of substance abuse.
Against it.
Early release from prison because of COVID-19.
For it, with, again, supports. I don't want to set people up for it. For it.
Next one, Black Lives Matter.
For it.
Next one, body cameras on police.
Always.
Next one, living wage.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, and the last one, traffic cameras.
Oh, I have to say, not for it.
Okay, so Kim Coco, now you have 2 minutes to expound upon any of these answers.
Okay, can I ask for a little clarification on qualified immunity? Remind me what that is.
It has to do with police.
Oh, gosh, no. No, that's, no, they are not immune from liability. Sorry, there's no qualified, no, absolutely not. In fact, they should be held under a stricter scrutiny for their actions because they do it in our name. they should definitely, the liability should be much higher. So thank you for that. I'm sorry I wasn't tuned to that. Civil asset forfeiture, I do not accept. That's wrong to take people, especially there's been no adjudication, and the property might not even belong to the person who's in the middle of it. So that's not okay either. And I was so disappointed that Speaker, my opponent, refused to override the governor's veto when it passed unanimously. And obviously cash bail, we need to, that needs to, again, where all it leads to is imprisoning people just for being poor, for not having the cash, not having anything to collateralize to get out. And they're not even, many of them have not even been adjudicated of a crime, and they're sitting there away from their jobs, away from providing for their families, and not been adjudicated. Absolutely wrong. What else? Early release. Yes, with supports. We can't just, set people up and then frame the early release program. We have to, hire people, social workers, to make sure they have the supports and safety nets, but do so quickly, but thoroughly.
If the early release referred to their concern that there might be a COVID-19 infestation in the prisons. So they were talking about
they're overpopulated already. They're already in violation of their own building code. You know what I mean? So they shouldn't even have that many people in there. Again, we should be diverting people away from being incarcerated and to actually getting the treatment that they need. So just doing the right thing and diverting people who truly have a mental health, challenge, who have a substance abuse challenge, and then the crime is basically a symptom of it. It's a flag of it, but it shouldn't. We should treat the actual root cause and not just the symptom.
Kim Kokua, I hope my board members will indulge me with 2 questions. I didn't get to ask my own 2 questions. The first one is regarding term limits for legislators.
I love this question because my opponent has been there for 26 years, and I struggle to try to understand what he thinks he's going to do or achieve in the 14th term that he couldn't do in the first 13 terms. So yes, I strongly believe in term limits. There's too many comfortable relationships that develop that actually interfere with things being done and state action being done in favor of the community at large, and not just to benefit certain moneyed interests with lobbyists. So that's why I support term limits.
Thank you. And the second one is this. I advocate at the legislature quite often, and legislators are quote unquote part-time legislators. So sometimes they have a secondary job, or maybe it's their primary job, I have no idea, but it appears to be a conflict of interest. What do you think about full-time legislators?
Well, those are 2 separate issues, I think. I think it's important to have legislators who are part of the communities they're serving. I think there should be a requirement that actually maybe they actually have some kind of job in their home, their home base, in their district, because then they're truly connected all the time with that. But so actually, I like having a more that kind of, so I don't support a full-time legislature. I think it's better to have them reflective out of the community. That said, I feels like the speaker gets $70,000 for half a year. His wage is 6 times higher than the minimum wage that he wouldn't raise. So that's a problem. And I also want to say about term limits. What we know is there's also an overrepresentation of particular kinds of bodies at the legislature. And, like men, for instance, are overrepresented in compared to the population, and they're entrenched. And unless we have term limits, it's harder to get the diversity at the table at the Capitol that we really need, because representation matters. So yeah, term limits would be one way to kind of, you know, get more diversity into that building.
Thank you. Well, Kim Kokua, thank you so much for joining us today. You provided insights into who you are and what your plans are. Thank you for your responses to our many questions in the lightning round. Please take up to 3 minutes to provide us a closing statement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again so much for this opportunity. You know, a lot of, you know, PBS Insights and the Democratic Party also wanted to do forums with me and with my opponent, and because he wouldn't do it, it got canceled. So it really denied me the opportunity to communicate in this way. So I really appreciate you guys not canceling just because my opponent didn't want to join us. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. One of the points I didn't get to address is, and I think I heard people mention this topic in earlier Kokua Council Zoom forums, was the how there's too many luxury condos going up in our district and not enough affordable housing available. One of the things I want to work on, and I've been speaking about this for many years now, is a moratorium on issuing building permits for luxury, which should actually include hotels, for hotels and luxury residential buildings, until we have all of our affordable housing needs built and met. And one of the things we could do to incentivize getting people who normally work on luxury to work on affordable is to say that if you are a developer on any level, if you are a draftsperson, an architect, anything whatever you do normally, whether it's for luxury or affordable, if you participate in fulfilling the needs of our affordable, you get certain credit. And when we take away the moratorium on building luxury, then the person or the development team with the most credits from building affordable, they'll be first in line to get their permit. But that could work, because what people don't understand is when somebody's trying to build affordable and going up against somebody building luxury, they're bidding on everything. They're bidding on land, and who's going to win in that bid? The luxury developer is going to win, right? Labor, who's going to outbid who? The luxury developer is going to outbid on the labor. Even materials like cement, they bid on that. So all of these factors will be outbid by luxury if they're still in the marketplace, right? So we need a moratorium. We're just doing affordable. That will actually make it more affordable to build affordable, which is what we need to address this problem. So I'll end on that note. Again, I really appreciate your time. If people would like more information, I'm on kimkoko.com. My social media platform, it's Vote Kim Kokua. Thank you so much. I just want to remind everyone, if you're voting, to make sure you mark Democratic Party if you're going to vote for me, because that's the race I'm in. And also to get your ballot in the mail by August 3rd and sign the back, because it lets the Office of Elections know that you voted, no one else, you voted, but then your actual ballot is anonymous.
Kim Kokua Iwamoto, thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed your participation. Thank you for reminding our audience too about voting by mail this year. To my colleagues and friends for Kokua Council, thank you for joining us again. To all of you, thank you for volunteering your valuable time. Besides the mail-in voting, please do not forget to complete your census forms. By completing that form, you help to bring needed federal funds for education, infrastructure, and healthcare to Hawaii. Please take care. Please stay safe. Malama pono. Aloha. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim Kokua.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.